There was a 15-meter tower, maybe 35 feet, of a small city that was left. That was all. I stood on a 360 degree looking around. There was nothing, and yet there was a small city here 1,000 years before that completely is gone.
Welcome to the Crossing It Off podcast, where we believe living with intention through a bucket list lifestyle is a great way to bring yourself personal joy. As you are crossing items off your list, you're actually filling up your bucket. The more items you cross off, the more joy gets added, until eventually your joy spills over into the lives of those around you. Now let's start crossing it off together. When you have exotic locations and locales on your bucket list, how much time do you spend thinking about the cultural experience that you'll have when you cross that item off? Is it just that you're going to do the tourist stuff? Or are you thinking about, how do I interact with locals? How do I understand the history of this place? Today's bucket list storyteller did just that. And we're going to learn about his experience really engaging with culture and not just taking from culture. Let's start crossing it off. My guest today is Will Gow, and he describes himself as a finding adventure over 60 and a curious traveler. Will, thanks so much for being on the show.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come on your podcast today.
Awesome. So tell our audience, what did you cross off your list?
Oh, the big one was Mongolia, which when you mention the word Mongolia, it conjures up all sorts of, okay, where is it now? And Genghis Khan, of course, the Mongols. But for most people going there, it's not been a destination.
So why is it for you? What was it that...
The quick story was that 2.5 years ago, one of these nonprofit groups that work with executives wanted to, they needed some people to work on a project in Mongolia. And I got a phone call, and about 30 seconds after the call, I said, yeah, send me, let's do it. Let's just do it. And that was my response immediately. And now I'm a Canadian, and I knew about Mongolia when I was younger. Of course, we all know, but Mongolia, of course, only became a democracy 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. One of the old Soviet satellites. So here we got this huge landmass, the 15th largest in the world, with only 3.2 million people between China and Russia. And, they're a democracy. They're very progressive. So next thing you know, I'm gone for 2.5 months traveling, provinces of Mongolia, working with interpreters on, great people. Just, that was phenomenal.
So were there any things that you had to do special to prepare for this trip that you may not have done in previous adventures or travels?
Yeah, it was, I'm in Calgary, Canada. Of course, right now our temperature is pretty well same as Mongolia in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, right today I'm dealing with minus 28 all of a sudden this week, which is minus 20 Fahrenheit. But I came out of Mongolia in the wintertime, it can go down to minus 35, 40. But in the spring and the summer and the fall, it's beautiful weather. We're talking, we're talking 38, 40, 45, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, or beautiful green area. But winter, of course, is challenging. So I had to make sure I packed, 3 different clothes. The other thing with Mongolia is that it's very open. It's like you could travel for 1,000 kilometers and it'll be flat. So again, it's the clothes packing. And also going through you're going through at least 5 different securities on all your destinations to get there. It's now easy to get to, but even pre-COVID, it was security was tight going through different areas. I got to go through, from Calgary and go to Seattle, or and go to Vancouver, and then of course you got to fly Korean, and then Korean to Mongolian Air. So you're dealing with about 4 flights. Could be 4 flights in that same 35-hour time frame to get there.
Wow, layovers and everything else, I'm sure.
Try not to do too many layovers. You try to keep it going so you don't lose momentum.
Yeah. Obviously, the infrastructure is not like you probably experienced in Calgary. So did you have to carry a pack, or did you just rough it with wheels on a suitcase?
I got wheels and suitcase, and I also carried a messenger bags and area, because I had support help on the ground too. That was great. But on weekends when I wasn't just busy with the work I'm doing, I walked and hired a driver everywhere. And now the difference with Mongolia, they got one city, Ulaanbaatar, which is 1.2 million people, and the rest of the country, there's all the small provincial towns are like 15,000 population. So you've got everything concentrated into one city, and the rest of the country is agriculture. Now they got 70 million animals. We're talking camels, sheep, horses. The experience I had was when you're driving across country, and it's like you're going. I've traveled, of course, like you probably have down through Nevada. Can you imagine travel Nevada 2 or 3 times over, and that's what you see? Like you're just and on top of that is it doesn't matter where you stop. There's animals like horses. I could close my eyes for half an hour, still get up and look out the window, and there be horses, camels. That's the type of landscape it is. It's going to be like a mini Jurassic Park that you're going through. So and you can see Genghis Khan 1,000 years before riding across. You can picture that. I mean, now you know why they had the horses and the vast army that traveled like that. Yeah, it's phenomenal country.
And what were you hoping to experience, especially culture-wise?
Oh, I mean, I was big. I wanted to. I knew the Mongolians were different than the rest of the Asian population, but they are definitely different. They're very progressive. I like working with professionals. They're very innovative. In fact, this past year, they're trying to change the whole economy totally digital. In fact, I'm the dinosaur carrying wads of cash around in Mongolian money, and they're transferring money in about, I've timed it, 20 seconds. They transfer money to each other with their androids, and I'm trying to still pay by cash. I thought it was quite funny.
So what were some of the side trips, or you said you were working during the week? So what were some of the things?
During the week I would take a side trip. I wanted to see the two hump camels of Bactrian. They're very rare camel. They're two humps. They're based mostly out of Mongolia. It was great to see the kind of these rare camels that are out there. The other thing was to see the massive amount of horses. The horses you used to see on the old movies, the Genghis Khan movies. I went to a couple sites. One was near the Chinese-Russian border out by a province called Dornod, eastern Mongolia. There was a 15-meter tower, maybe 35 feet, of a small city that was left. That was all. I stood on a 360-degree looking around. There was nothing, and yet there was a small city here 1,000 years before that completely is gone. So the sense of history is huge. And then I went to another ancient site that was out about 140 kilometers, which would be about 100 miles outside the small provincial town of Bernert, Sabata province. And the cultural person in the area, they call the small towns Sums. She took me to show me where they had dug up a lot of the old ancient Mongolian, I'm going to call them royalty. And they had a Japanese and an American company had an archaeological company 3 years before COVID had dug up this ancient site where they had a sarcophagus and it was where they were burying, and they did a lot of ritual, and they recovered it again because they were going to have to re-excavate it. But that was 8th century. I mean, and the surprising thing about that was, again, I'm in the middle of nowhere, the original areas of the Mongols. So we stopped at a local nomadic herders, and they call they're not yurts, they're called gers. We stopped there, they're very hospitable. I sat down and was talking with the family. He's like 8th generation of the area. You know, you look at his face, you think you can see 1,000 years back. The entire population is not changed in 1,000 years. The progressiveness, I walk in, and so he's got the old carts, camels for pulling, but he's also got the motorcycle. He's got solar panels, and he's got his Android phones charging on batteries, and they're watching Turkish soap operas. So you want a bit of a little bit of a sense that you can be in the middle of literally the middle of nowhere. I mean, if you look on the map, you know, close to Siberia. Yeah, he's with his family, and you know, they're carrying on with their traditions, but you know, in the middle of watching Turkish soap operas where they're serving us, you know, the original vodka and milk. So yeah, it was quite the experience. And one more thing is, I passed my last trip, which I put on my YouTube. I'm going past this kind of ancient fort. So I had the driver turn in, and it was a Sunday. It was actually family day. And so Mongolians have a very traditional, when they dress, very traditional, almost Star Wars look, from they on a kind of a small pond lake, they were having tug of war. It was minus 25. They had these families out, and I was freezing, and they're out there doing tug of war. Like, amazing.
How was it for you being older white person traveling in those conditions? Because I imagine that you could probably spot the white people
No,
a
I'm the only
mile
one.
away.
Trust me. I'm the only
Right?
one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So how was that experience? Was that different for you, or how did you adjust to that? Or
I think this is what I feel. People are the same all over the world.
mm,
I don't see the difference. Once you interact with them personally, within 30 seconds, you know what's going to happen. And I found that I didn't need anybody around to help me when it came to, communicating. Pretty well, you could communicate anything with good body language and a few words, and speaking a few words of Mongolian got you a long way. And on the surface, they appear very stern, but they like to have a lot of fun. So and again, they are. I don't want to categorize different cultures, but they are different as an Asian culture that I found. Just again, a very progressive society. The average age is 28. So once you put that in, yeah, it struck me too. 28 years age is the average age of Mongolia out of 3.2 million people, and 90% of the population is well educated. In fact, most of the women I worked are all master's degrees. English is becoming more of a second language in the last 2-3 years. Russian was always their kind of they're close to Russians. They're torn right now because of the war, but Russia's still they're kind of like older brother in a way that they've had some issues with. But China, I don't know. It's hard to talk about. Their work with China is complex. 85%, 80% of their trades with China. Again, they got connections with both China and Russia. So they're torn between trying to keep a neutral stance. They're doing a good job of it.
Here at the Crossing It Off podcast, we are passionate about inspiring you in your bucket list lifestyle and empowering you to live out your list. We offer many resources to assist you in your bucket list journey, such as web resources in the show notes, bucket list mentoring services, my book Live Out Your Lists, a private Facebook group for you to share your bucket list success stories with others, and more. All of these can be found at crossingitoffpodcast.com. Find the resource that fits your need so that you can live out your list. Now back to the show. When you found out you were going and you made arrangements, how did your family and friends respond to when you said, I'm going to go to Mongolia for a couple months?
The first thing is my family said, what? Mongolia? And because even though Canadians pride themselves on knowing a lot about the world, when it came to Mongolia, it's probably like everybody else is, okay, what's going on there? I think it was the fact that you're going literally to the middle of nowhere between two large superpowers like China and Russia. Mm. And it's still an unknown area because they haven't had a chance to break out in the last 30 years as a democracy. They're starting now. It's more of an unknown. And they're all, and you know what? I don't know how you get when you travel, but family and friends are always saying, oh, be careful when you travel. And I'm listening to them go, well, I think the whole intent is not to be. The whole intent is not to be in your comfort zone. The whole intent is not to be safe in some bubble somewhere. I don't know. I got to share when I've got a lot of my male friends that are talking about traveling. Their idea is going to Mexico, of course, out of Canada, sitting on the beach drinking a margarita. And I said, I can't do that anymore. I can't. I get too comfortable. It's almost like you want to build your resilience up. And Mongolia, for me, watching them. Gave me more of a sense of resilience, and I come back feeling much more ready to tackle things, ready to do it.
When you were done, I mean, you spent a long time there. At that first trip that you went, how did you feel when you were leaving? What were kind of some of the sense of feelings?
Oh, I'd be bored when I get back to Calgary. I mean, I got things to do. I want to see family, but I'm going to back up here again. When you're traveling. And, we all have exes going around, but I found that as a male, you become more attractive to a lot of people because you're traveling more. You're off the couch. You're not sitting home watching football, whatever. And but when I get back to here, I'm ready to go out again.
Hmm.
I catch up with a lot of my family and my sons and daughter-in-law. So, but a lot of my personal friends, and they can hear because I'm told them the same thing. There's so much going on in everybody else's lives that you can't travel with them as much anymore. I
Hmm.
mean, I just wanted to pick up and go down to Vegas when I get back to Calgary to get some regeneration, but trying to find your old friends that can jump in and take a road trip with you. Second thing is they have a hard time relating to the experience of traveling a bit on your own to more or less traveled places. They're so used to going to the more comfortable beaches or kind of contrived vacations. I've got a friend that's more fortunate, that's extremely well off. When he travels, he goes to 5-star hotels, and I kept on saying to him, I can't tell the picture from one difference to the next whether you're in one country or the other. The hotels look the same. Uh, yeah,
Met some folks along the Camino de Santiago when I was walking, and they were staying in these, $300, $400 a night hotels, and it was just like, okay, well, I got my $8 over here. I'm gonna.
yeah. That reminds me. When I was my last trip. There's a small town called Zumon. It's a provincial town in the province of Tuve, one of the larger provinces. But they have a hostel, youth hostel. I was the only one there. The young boy that was there as kind of a caretaker because it was kind of off season. It's where I was put up, and I'm kind of figuring like I'm camping in my RV in this hostel, and they got a small coffee shop, but I'm down there making my own coffee, getting the stuff going, and they had left to go to the big city for 3 days, threw me the keys and said, that's it. You're on kind of on your own. And but I walked down to what they call the governor's offices with the government people. And that morning it was minus 44, and which is that temperature. I thought I'm used to as a Canadian, but I'll tell you, that was cold. That was an experience. And yet, a couple months later, I've experienced beautiful spring weather with the horses riding on the steppes of Mongolia and yelling and screaming on the steps like you're riding this horse, right? It's great.
If you go back to that first trip
Yep.
and you come back home, what do you think the biggest change was in Will? What was something that opened your eyes, or
It reminded me that that time is going by. You can feel the weight of it. There comes a certain point you start feeling the weight of time on you that you can't accumulate assets anymore. It's ridiculous to keep on working or accumulate. You got to create kind of accumulate experiences, if that's a word, to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a mindset change that it's hard to do with other people that you're working, that you're talking to. Is that, yeah, I want to work part-time and travel. I want to do this stuff, but it's the experiences, because every day goes by, your health could happen, could stop. So there's a constant pressure to continue with trying to gain these experiences. And it's a lot of effort. But the other hand is sitting back and trying to be too comfortable is not an option either.
Yeah. If someone came to you, if you were sitting in a coffee shop and you started a conversation with a stranger and you told them about your trips to Mongolia and they said, yeah, I want to put that on my bucket list, besides the Nike slogan, just do it, what is something that you would encourage them to either try to experience or be mindful of as they're traveling through the country?
Yeah, well, there's things I still want to do, but I'll give them a couple things. I want to get closer to the Gobi Desert because it is a real desert. I was on the fringe, which is more the steppe area, and I'm traveling by Jeep overland, 7-8 hours on flat surfaces because they're nomadic herder roads, but they're flat because it's hard to imagine hard packed, kind of sandy, cold weather at minus 25, but it's sunny. One thing about Mongolia, it's sunny almost 300 days a year. It's a beautiful blue sky and sunny, even though it's cold. The trips that I want to take when I go back there was I want to go to Karakoram, which is the old capital. It's about 6 hours from the Ulaanbaatar, but it's the old Silk Road capital. That's that Genghis Khan used to be. I want to get near the reindeer herders, which are further towards Siberia. That would be a 2-day trip to see the reindeer herders. And the one I like to do, and it's still about 1,500 miles, maybe 2,000 kilometers from Ulaanbaatar, to go to the areas of Kazakhs where the eagle hunters are. Now, I've met a few Americans traveling on these trips where that's what they want to do. They get ready to go to visit the eagle hunters, but that's given the roads to get across Mongolia. You need to plan a week or so in
Ooh,
order to get the driver to go across to get to the mountain areas where they call the eagle hunters are. That's what I want to do. See the mountainous areas, which you sometimes associate with Mongolia, but it's closer to Russia borders. So you got to plan these trips, is what I'm
yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, plan them out for sure. Will, what is something else besides traveling to Mongolia that's on your bucket list?
I'm trying to look at the off places I've traveled, like North Macedonia, Armenia. Try to stay away from the well-traveled places to more of the old historical places. Again, less traveled. Those are on my list. Now, it doesn't mean I don't want to take short trips and go to the U.S. and do those trips on those type of things. But there's more what I call historical sites around the world that I want to travel to that would be very interesting to go to. But those smaller countries, again, like North Macedonia, Armenia. Now, I did go to the Philippines on another one a few months ago, but I was in the mountain regions, like a place called Dolores, where they still had the active volcanoes.
Mm.
I'm going back in about 2 months to another place called Alfonso. So I'm not in these tourist areas. I'm in the mountain areas, mountain regional areas. That's what would appeal to me more of a kind of adventure and be with more of the culture with the people on there.
And how do you find those places, right? I mean,
I like the Philippine great people, the mother you to death. I don't like the poverty. A lot of places I'm going, the poverty bothers me. Now Mongolia is different. You could there is the poverty, but it's not overt in your face. They have a culture of looking after their family, so you would never. I mean, absolutely never. Unlike Canada, maybe the U.S., I never, ever once in any town, the city, ever seen anybody on the street, ever.
mm,
Now, some areas, alcoholism is a huge issue with some of the areas, but they're doing their best they can. The, but again, when you go back to cultural looking after each other, just never saw it. Now in Philippines, very entrepreneurial, very area, but there were some mountain areas, smaller communities that were extremely poor, and that bothered me a lot. A lot of the good friends I made there, the people I work with, inflation's at 15%. Now
mm,
their average wage is probably like a $1.50 American hourly. A professional wage there would be 400 US a month. So everything's in kind of a context, but inflation is hitting them very badly, and you can see the effect on them. I would notice things like if they buy toilet paper, they buy one roll at a time. They're very money conscious, and yet education, they'll go anywhere in the world to take their sons and daughters to get a good education. U.S., Canada, Australia, to get their education. They'll sacrifice what they can to get their children highly educated.
Will, I appreciate you being here and sharing your story, and that you have an adventurous spirit. I think that's awesome. Where can folks find you on the internet to like learn more about your travels?
I started a YouTube channel called Will Solo Travels. Yeah, Will Solo Travels.
Awesome. We'll put that link in the show notes so that folks can find you very easily. Will, thank you for being here, and I wish you the best of luck of finding more places that are less traveled to go to and experience.
Roger, thanks for the opportunity today. You take care.